So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my greatest pleasure to be here to introduce our keynote speaker tonight. Before I invite her to the podium, I would like to say something about the background. Please correct me if my understanding is incorrect. The indigenous people's culture is rooted in storytelling. They have tradition, history, value, and experiences passing on from generation to generation. So although all of us here is successful in the community, we may not know too much about the success story of the indigenous people, especially in setting up enterprises, business, and blending into the mainstream community. Our VIP speaker tonight is Mohawk Bear Clan from the Six Nations of the Grand River Territories. She is the P1 licensee at the Law Society of Ontario, a member of the Ontario Paralegal Association. She is a Juris Doctor candidate 2024. She is also a multipreneur with her business ranging from indigenous support for criminal and personal injury matters, clothing business by the Six Clothing, partnership with indigenous-owned beverage company, the Red Lamina, to her dances company, First Nation Dance Company, a founding member of the White Pine Dancer, an indigenous entertainment manager and keynote speaker representing indigenous women in business. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Miss Abby Carpenter.
Scano, everyone. Jagut stalongo negyaso, genegehaga, negoan jonda, nyagwai, negoan shoutda. And to translate to English, I introduced myself. My English name is Abby Carpenter, and I'm from Mohawk Nation, Bear Clan, from the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory. If you're unsure where Six Nations is, it's approximately an hour and a half south of here. I would like to thank the Chinese Cultural Center for inviting me out to be the keynote speaker on the history of Indigenous business and trade and the challenges Indigenous people face in business today. Firstly, I would like to express that all Indigenous people are not the same. We all come from different nations. We all have our own language and dialects of our language. We all have different habitats, like what is available for us in each area in terms of hunting or fishing, and our housing is also different. We each have different ceremonies, and we all have different family traditions. Each nation also has their very own set of guidelines as to how we engage within our community. The native population pre-contact of the European settlers consisted of over 600 nations. During that time, Indigenous people traded nation to nation. Back then, Indigenous people freely traded from the shores of British Columbia down to the coastline of California, throughout the nations of the Midwest and Plains nations in Canada, to the eastern nations of the Nova Scotia, and down to the eastern coastline to Florida. Among the items that were traded were organically sustenance, such as seashells, animal hides, such as buffalo and deer, rabbit and ermine, just to name a few. Food items such as grown corn, beans, and squash, medicinal herbs, tobacco, as well as their seeds. When the settlers came to North America, the trading from nation to nation changed drastically. The trade was no longer peaceful, nor did the trade transactions flow freely. Amongst the items that were traded with the European settlers were axes, rifles, glass beads, metal utensils, alcohol, textiles, and blankets. During that time, wampum was made out of purple and white seashells, and it was used as money. To encourage fair trade with European settlers and other nations, wampum belts were made out of seashells and used as international legal instruments. Today, as an Indigenous woman in business, I faced many challenges. And to give you a little bit of insight as to what it's like to be an Indigenous girl growing up on the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory, my grandparents attended residential school at the Mohawk Institute in the city of Brantford. My parents and myself attended day school, which is a branch of residential school. We all suffered the effects of residential school and the intergenerational traumas. Growing up and throughout college, there was not many people in my classes that were Indigenous like me, nor did we learn anything Indigenous related. In regards to law, Indigenous women were not allowed to work in the legal field as a lawyer until 1955. For Indigenous people who are looking to develop businesses, it was very hard to receive business loans, something so easy. But because we live and have our businesses on Six Nations Reserve, it's not identified by loan companies that startup loans were not able to be given because of tax exemption. Many businesses located on the Six Nations Reserve are not recognized within the government. I had a wonderful opportunity to assist British Columbia and Ontario organizations in submitting calls to action for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. During that time, I had to travel to many different First Nations communities. And one particular community was very challenging. While I was attending there on business, I had to have security escort me off the plane to the conference that I was attending. All of this because of the color of my skin and the vulnerability of Indigenous women. In the light of all of the challenges that myself and Indigenous people have overcome as entrepreneurs, I will continue to evolve in business and in law. And I would just really like to thank Carson Ho for inviting First Nations Dance Company and myself out this evening. And thank you for listening. And I would also like to congratulate the Scarborough York Region Chinese Business Association on your 39th anniversary. Thank you.
You're sharing your insights. It's a truly great presentation that we can pick up some witness from the indigenous perspective. So we should take the truth seriously, and I think all the Canadians from different cultural backgrounds, we should move on hand in hand to make our country stronger. Thank you very much again.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.